Good morning, everybody. I'm Salavallo. I've been to every single country in the world, and in this series, I am taking you inside of the poorest countries in the world. I'm going continent by continent, so today we are going to talk about Asia. Asia is a unique continent because there are 45 countries. It is enormous landmass. It goes from the Middle East to Russia to Southeast Asia to Japan, Korea, China up in the north. Asia is interesting because it is so big and it contains many different cultures, political systems, and different types of economies. So you have the Middle East, you have the Indian subcontinent, you have Southeast Asia, you have like North Asia, you have Central Asia, you have Russia. So there's so much inside of Asia. What's also interesting is, although there are some poor countries that I'm going to cover, also 5 of the 10 richest countries in the world are in Asia. So you have a couple in the Gulf and a couple in Southeast Asia. So, Brunei, Singapore, as well as Qatar, UAE, Kuwait, and then Macau and Hong Kong, which are kind of parts of China, are also up there as some of the richest places in the entire world. The way that we're looking at Poorest today is GDP PPP per capita, which looks at the total amount that a country produces divided by the number of people there, and then adjusted for what that can purchase based on a basket of goods and prices in the country. This is a pretty standard metric that's used. Obviously, it's not perfect. What would be better would be like the median income, what the middle person makes, but most countries don't have that kind of data. Another way to look at poverty is the Human Development Index, which combines health, education, as well as income. And all the countries I'm going to talk about today are, as well as being the 3 lowest in terms of GDP, PPP per capita, are also the lowest in terms of HDI in Asia. What's useful about the PPP per capita is that it gives us figures that we can compare. So today, the 3 countries we're going to talk about have GDPs per capita around $2,000 to $3,000. The global average is 17,000. So the average person in these 3 countries is earning, almost 8 to 9 times less than the average person in the world. I also need to put a disclaimer in Asia, just like I did for Africa with Somalia, which is that in Asia, there are a couple countries, North Korea and Syria, that have really horrible data. So before the war, Syria wasn't at all one of the world's poorest countries, but now, it's just hard to measure kind of what's going on. North Korea famously closed, doesn't, send out a lot of data. If it does, it's not necessarily accurate. I cover my trip to North Korea in a lot of different videos. I should do one about Syria, but today we're going to talk about 3 others, starting with Afghanistan. I'm actually excited to talk about it because I've been asked by you guys a lot to cover Afghanistan, and I don't think I have in any video yet. I went to Afghanistan in 2017. I went only to Kabul. In 2017, there was a big increase in terrorist activity, especially around Kabul. They were shutting different borders. A lot of people, canceled their trips, weren't going. I was going as the guest of one of my friends whose family was luckily able to provide me the security system that I, kind of required in order to feel comfortable going. So we always had armored vehicles. Good job. Because my friend's family was in the government, we were able to be connected to the government security system, meaning that they were always on the walkie-talkie saying like where we were going and where we shouldn't go, and making sure that I was kept safe. So everything was taken care of from that regard. However, it really wasn't the best time to be there, and now it's gotten slightly better. And I know a lot of people who've been recently, and and also people who've been years ago that had very different experiences. Why is Afghanistan poor? it's somewhat simple. We all know it's been a conflict-ridden war zone for decades, you know, starting with a war between the Russian and the Taliban, then the Taliban take over, then America comes in and does its, you know, thing. So that is somewhat straightforward. I loved my trip to Afghanistan, and not just because my hosts made it such a special trip, but because it's incredibly beautiful. The food was amazing. And I love traveling to places that you already have a preconceived notion in your mind, and then it gets changed. So obviously we have an understanding, or we have an opinion kind of what Afghanistan is or might be. And to actually go and to challenge that and see the truth and see the reality is really eye-opening, and that's the whole reason why I travel. And so a trip to somewhere like Kabul was really important for me in order to see kind of the disagreement between what I believe and what is true. So I stayed in Afghanistan again, I think it's 3 or 4 days. What we did is we drove around every single day looking at different parts of Kabul. So the first day in Kabul, we went to this hilltop area that looked out onto this like gorgeous view of Kabul, which was really colored this like beautiful pink or purple, the mountains in the distance. I mean, it's one of the most beautiful things that I've seen. The second day, we stayed in the city and did more historical things. We went to a famous Blue Mosque. We also went to a couple famous shrines and a museum that was having a photography exhibition, which was really fascinating. And the third day, we left the city a little bit and we went to a lake. We actually we walked all around the lake. We had dinner like lakeside, or lunch lakeside, and then we also did like swan boats on the lake, which was funny. You always see that in like movies for dates, and it was like me and a security guard. But it was really a good time. I would love to go back to Afghanistan to see so many different parts of it. A lot of tourists go up in the north on the border areas with Tajikistan. I have actually driven that road, so I've looked into Afghanistan as well in like 2014, which was before I went. But yeah, I would love to go. There's so many gorgeous mountains and like natural areas. And there's a lot of history, not just of the past, 20 years that we hear a lot about, but it's played a role in a lot of, just its position kind of in the middle of a lot of things that are happening between the Middle East and Asia, between, Russia and also America. All these things have been really fascinating. The second poorest country in Asia is Yemen. I've talked at length about my trip, kind of taking you step by step in a video entitled My Scariest Trip Ever. So there's that whole like 18 minutes, which explains everything that happened. What I'll say here is Yemen also currently a war zone, but also one of the most, or countries full of historical sites in the world, especially in the Middle East. So it's a place that I really, really want to get back to and be able to explore all of it, from like Aden and Sana'a and all in the island of Socotra. And there's a lot of like really fascinating Islamic schools there I would love to go to, but now is not the time for that. I was lucky to be able to go. I did see some like fascinating things and learned interesting parts about the culture, but I did not have a great experience there. I unfortunately was brought there like by a con man who just like wanted money and was horrible. But I have a whole video in all of that detail. So I guess my trip inside of Yemen was kind of indicative of what is happening right now and the reason why it's so poor, which is that it's unstable, it's volatile, it's dangerous. People are having high levels of stress. People are taking advantage of other people. That's not the Yemen that we've known for, hundreds and thousands of years. Like Yemen is this beautiful place with incredible people who have really kind of been at the forefront of moving a lot of parts of global culture, not just regional ones. But unfortunately for now, that kind of isn't accessible to us travelers. So God willing, sometime soon we'll be able to get back to Yemen and explore these things more. Third poorest country in Asia is Nepal. Nepal has a GDP PPP per capita of around 2,900 or 3,000. So again, comparing that to the global average of about 17,000. My trip to Nepal is an interesting one to talk about in my series of Inside the World's Poorest Countries because, like so many of the other countries I've discussed, I actually visited Nepal as a guest of a Nepalese family, and actually one of the wealthier Nepalese families. So my trip to Nepal was really this relaxing weekend when I was living and working in India. So I spent a summer in Mumbai, and for one weekend, my Nepali friend invited me up to Kathmandu, and it was kind of the opposite of what you might expect. You know, it was like full of really fun parties and, you know, a beautiful home and incredible food. So obviously it was very different from if I would be in Nepal as a tourist. The point of going to Nepal wasn't entirely to be a tourist. The point was to see my friend, as well as to like experience the country a little bit, but you know, shorter amount of time, and not filling all of that time with like seeing site, but really just spending time with the family, relaxing for the weekend, kind of getting away from the busyness of the life I was living in Mumbai, and to kind of enjoy a little more comfort in Kathmandu with my friend. I would love to go back. I really want to go back and see all the mountains that go to Everest Base Camp, or I don't think maybe I'll ever climb Everest, but like I think that would be a great way to go back. One of the things in Nepal that I'll always remember, this was in 2012, a year before I converted to Islam, but while I was kind of defining myself as like a mystic pantheist, or like just really exploring the way that I believed in God and what I thought was the truth, and experiencing a lot of different religious and spiritual moments. My friend took me to go and see the Kumari. The Kumari is, in the opinion of the people there, a living goddess. So she is a god, and it's a young prepubescent girl, and essentially she is chosen like very young, and then like among all of the girls, they like go and find who was reincarnated, and then whenever she goes through puberty and, you know, menstruates for her first time, she is then like not the Kumari anymore, and they find a new one. But we went to visit her. Every day she does like a viewing where she just walks in front of you know, a crowd that forms. And although I, even at the time, didn't believe that she was God, it was fascinating to be somewhere and seeing someone who did definitely believe that they were around people who did believe that she was. And what she did, and this is like a young girl, she's like 8 or 9 or something, but you know, what she did, she stood at this like window and she looked in the eyes of each person that was there. You know, maybe there's 15 or 10 or something, and she looked like person by person really deep in the eyes, and then she just went away. And that was like this incredibly powerful moment. So kind of a key part of my experience in my spiritual journey that I'll always remember, which is just kind of like that power of community and that power of belief, and kind of like the hierophany, or like the importance of a presence of something in the kind of the profane world that connects us with the sacred. So that was definitely part of Nepal that I will never forget, as well as the wonderful treatment that I got from my incredible hosts. This has been a really fun series to do. I've now covered my trips to the poorest countries in all 5 continents. I hope that you've enjoyed these stories from the 15 or more countries. I definitely enjoyed traveling to them. I definitely want to get back to them. I hope that you saw that even though these are the poorest countries in the world, there are incredible experiences that you can have there, and that poor is something that is probably like in ill-defined terms in the way that we will compare countries or choose places to go. So I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, comment down below. I respond to most of them, and you know, like, subscribe, do all of that stuff, and I hope that everybody will travel safe, and that I will see you again.